Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling, brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries in 25 countries. If you're interested in learning more, check out manufactured.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, hit that subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Anna Whiteman, for our introduction to our guest today, Noah Wunsch, founder and CEO of Ruby Hibiscus Water. Ruby Hibiscus produces juicy, organic soda that's big on flavor, big on benefits, and uses the power of hibiscus. They are sparkling, but they weren't always that way, and Noah didn't come from a CPG background initially when he started the brand. This was so much fun and informative conversation about how to build a beverage brand that's lean, and also how we got into Whole Foods, his approach to retail expansion, working with manufacturers. Without further ado, here's Noah. Noah, thank you so much for joining me here today. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's a Friday. I'm not allowed to complain on Fridays.
No one's allowed to complain on Fridays. I completely agree with you. I know we've been kind of at this for a while, so happy that we finally are here together and finally are going to record your episodes. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Feeling is mutual, man. Let's go. Let's do it.
Take me to the very beginning. What got you interested in hibiscus?
I mean, a lot of things got me interested in hibiscus is the good news. But in the beginning, it was really just I was trying to find something that I could make at home that was a flavorful beverage that didn't rely on anything artificial and didn't have a ton of sugar in it. My problem was that I've always been a pretty healthy eater. I do have a very bad sweet tooth. But I started realizing that while I was eating very well, I started taking a closer look at what I was drinking, and realized that there was so much crap in all the beverages I was drinking, and especially the better for you ones that had these great functional benefits would often be slammed with 16 to 32 grams of sugar. So the quest kind of started with the idea of, can I find something that satisfies this need I have of a flavorful beverage that I can make at home that doesn't rely on sugar? And hibiscus kind of hit all those check marks.
Why do you think hibiscus has been maybe like overlooked when in terms of like the better for you when you think about drinks? I mean, I do agree with you that you know, sometimes I look at like better for you drinks that are definitely better than like what the incumbents were, like not denying that, but still there might still be like a lot of sugar in them if you look like the sugar content and you know, different kind of aspects of the beverage. But why do you think that like hibiscus just hadn't really been thought of?
I think it had been, is the good news. Yeah, there are a few examples that I was able to look at as case studies of someone who had tried to do hibiscus before and who didn't. It didn't work out for whatever reason. There's a great example in High Hanging Fruit, the founder of Zico's book, where he actually talks about, before committing to coconut water, he talked about all these other drinks he could make, and hibiscus was one of the drinks actually on his mood board. And I still would like to talk to him and be like, so why didn't you do that one? But there was one in the early 2010s, which I think was called HK or something along those lines. And it was in a 16-ounce glass bottle. And I believe the issue with that one is it was a very young founder. I don't know that they could fundraise enough because, as you know, this is a very cost-intensive business. But I also think that the flavor profile was probably too tart for the everyday consumer at that point. I think that was right before kombucha really spiked up in sales. So the tartness for consumers really wasn't there. And there was another one called Uba, OOBA. And I actually was able to speak to the founder of that one, really bright guy, amazing guy named JD Enright. And he shared some of his learnings with me. And like, it's a fascinating case where it was kind of the other direction, where there was too much sugar in his product at a time when people were starting to be really conscious of how much sugar they were putting in their body. And plastic bottles were kind of on the way out. It was in a plastic bottle. I'm sure that I'm very much oversimplifying, so I hope that JD won't hold it against me. But I was looking at why they hadn't worked before, and there were a lot of really interesting nuggets that kind of went into how we created Ruby.
Would love to kind of dive into that, and that's really fascinating about how. Well, also, I will have to read that book.
It's a great book.
Mark Rampola's book, right?
Mm-hmm. High Hanging Fruit.
It's really interesting, like the two different case studies you pointed out. One, one, maybe the consumer wasn't there in terms of tartness and not being used, not wanting maybe unsweetened drinks, versus the other one that might have been with Uba might have been too sweet. How then was like your process um when it came to finding the right mix that ultimately became Ruby Hibiscus?
It's iterative. I mean, I my first product didn't work. I mean, we had a still line that was popular as a niche beverage. Like we had really nice velocity in natural accounts. It wasn't nice enough that we were setting the world on fire. So we iterated and we listened to our consumers. First thing we heard from our consumers is we want a sweeter product. Originally, our tart hibiscus was really tart, zero sugar, 0 calories. I was obsessed with it, but it's kind of like they say in fashion, don't make a t-shirt for yourself. Um, so we created new SKUs. We did pomegranate lime, we did ginger cherry, and they all had a hibiscus base to them. But then consumers told us, you know what, we want bubbles in it. So we pivoted. We went over to the sparkling line, and that's where we really found some success. And we were able to really iterate and create a pretty unique product, I would say.
So you started off with flat, and then you pivoted in terms of sparkling. On the manufacturing side of things, did you have to could you use like the same manufacturer, or is that something you also had to maybe change out your on the supply chain side too?
We had to change out. So we at any given time, shout out to Zach Cohen, who's our director of ops and like an absolute wizard. At any given time, we have conversations going with multiple co-packers all the time, just to make sure we have backups, because something always goes wrong. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you, Mike. Um, and also to realize value in our cost of goods. So we did have to pivot co-packers at that point. Not a big deal. We'd been talking about people when we were prepared. But yeah, the manufacturing process changed a little bit.
Did it seem like pivoting to sparkling was a pretty big risk, or did you feel like you already had so much validation in terms of people getting feedback from customers that they actually wanted like a sparkling one, that it didn't seem maybe as risky as you thought it would be?
I think we felt we had it wasn't it was a calculated risk, i.e., we did feel that we had enough feedback from the marketplace that we could shift pretty healthily into it. We talked to our partners before making that switch to make sure that they would support that, and a lot of them were on board for that. And the second part was like it was I kind of call it an undeniable product. When I tried this sparkling version, we were still in glass, and we were like, it's funny. It really came about because a co-packer kind of said, you know what, I was messing around and I put some bubbles in this, and you should give it a try. And I tried it, yeah, and I tried it, and I was like, that is really good. Like that is undeniably good. So it was a 1-2 punch, let's say.
Wow, that's really, and I'd imagine like you were on the bottle version was already in retail. Did you have to did you have to convince retailers to say, hey, we're actually going to do a sparkling? Like, how were those conversations?
Most of them really good. I mean, again, like you're coming to a retailer who is a partner of yours, and you are a partner of theirs. And in the best cases, you have that relationship, which is, I've talked a lot about the fact that Ruby really does a lot of field marketing. We're in the field a lot, and our retailers do see that. So I think they take it seriously when we say to them, we're making this decision because customers tell us they want this decision. So it's really a great way for us to be able to say, we're pretty confident that this is going to work out. We feel good about this, and give us a shot, please, and we'll support it.
Got it. And so really just knowing that how involved you are on the sales marketing side and like merchandising and everything, that they felt comfortable, like, okay, like like Ruby's gonna obviously like commit to this. It's not just gonna be like, hey, here you go, here's the PO, and then kind of shut off.
I can't overstate the import of being in the field. It was something that Sandro from Sanzo shared with me at the very beginning of my journey. He was just like, in the beginning, you don't mean anything to your distributor or to these retailers until you show them that you mean something. And that couldn't be more true. The fact is, like, we don't put food on these people's tables yet, but it's our job to show them that we're willing to work and put in the effort to be one of those players.
Right. Right. No, that makes total sense. I know that like when I had on Paul Vogue at from
My
Ouroboros.
guy Paul.
Yeah.
That handsome devil. Oh, Paul.
Love him.
God, I love that man.
Love him. He's great. He's great. He was telling me about how like in the early days how something that he had to learn was merchandising and really being obviously out there and like understanding that it's not just like hey here's a PO great we're like in store. It's like no that now like the real work starts, right? And everything.
That's 100% true.
Well,
Yeah.
how did you first it's so hard to get into retail. How did you first do it? Like what was like the first store that you got into?
It's weird to say it, but it was Whole Foods. It is a very strange situation, and one we're very fortunate for. Our product in so many ways, especially with the still line, it was like constructed for Whole Foods. Like no artificial additives, no added sweeteners, nothing. 100% organic, one ingredient and water with functional benefits. It was in a glass bottle. Like it was really hyper geared towards that natural channel and the Whole Foods shopper. Um, and was very fortunate to find someone at Whole Foods. The myth, the legend, John Lawson, who many people talk highly about, and understandably so. He gave us a chance. That's all you get. Like it's up to you after you get that chance to show you deserve it. But it's remarkable that he gave us the chance, and we're eternally grateful.
I guess kind of going back to the sparkling side once you introduced sparkling. When it came to actually orders and doing like the first run of sparkling, how many since of course this was like a new chance, you felt very confident of it because when you first had this experience at the co-packer, just trying something out with sparkling, it tasted amazing, and you also got to some customer feedback saying that they wanted like a sparkling version. But on that first run, like how many did you order, and what was that kind of like test like?
Yeah. We ordered 1 billion cans to start. No, 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 no. We were really confident, but like the fact is anything can still go wrong in the process. Like for a first co-packer run, whether it's your original product or it's a new product you're doing, like do it as low as possible. It might not be as good for your cost of goods, but the fact is that the likelihood of things going wrong are really, really good on that first run. And the fact is, if you lose that entire product run versus paying a percentage point more, it's not going to be fun for you. So for us, I think we did maybe 10,000 of each flavor on the first run. We started with 3 flavors, and we had Whole Foods on board to swap out the still. They agreed that this was a superior product, so we knew we had a really good partner on board for it. Um, so we started with a conservative run though, just to see that everything came out 100.
What were some of the things that actually could go wrong in your first run, or just overall within manufacturing on the beverage side that you've
I
experienced,
mean,
or even?
everything.
Or
Um, One thing I haven't experienced, which I'm really grateful for, is like I've heard horror stories about pallets exploding, like literally just overcarbonation or contamination in the can, which just leads to essentially like a biochemical bomb of a pallet. There's so many horror stories, Mike. I mean, there's loose seams at the top of the can, so it's leaking out, and then it's not going to be shelf stable because there is air seeping in. Um, the ones we've experienced are probably the everyday ones where like, can sleeves might look a little messed up and you have to kind of throw them out. Um, you will get some that usually are bloated and they'll explode and then you'll freak out and you'll have to audit an entire pallet and you'll find no, that was just one can and it was a rare instance. I think the worst we had as an experience was when we first started. This was when we were in the glass bottle. We shipped a pallet to Chicago, and they reported that like some of the glass had broken. Like the pallet's messed up. Like we're sending it all back. And at that point, like a pallet was everything to us. Like it was terrifying. And I remember Zach, again, the goat, the greatest.
how many? By the way, but how many cans could you fit in a pallet?
Cans, we do 150, so it's around you know 2,700 cans. I think with the bottles it was 198. So it was today. That's it. It's substantial when you're starting. The thing about being in this business is your skin toughens up real quick. But in that instance, we sent Zach Cohen on an airplane to check every single bottle, and he did it. And like he had to go to the airport, and it turned out that like 3 bottles had broken in transit, and that was just a nightmare. And God bless him. Um, anything can go wrong. Anything can go wrong. The product can taste bad. That's, by the way, that's the worst, Mike. The worst thing that can happen is the product tastes bad. Like you're now stuck with a run of, let's say, 30,000 cans of a product that you don't believe in because something got wrong in the formulation. That's the worst.
How do you do quality control?
With us, it's different because we're working with all organic ingredients. So there's variability. As an example, with us, we have different lots of hibiscus that we get regularly globally. So one yield of hibiscus might be different than another yield, and therefore you're going to get different flavor profiles from them. We've been working on finding different ways of kind of leveling that out. So, in figuring out what our formulation is to lock in, we have now found consistency in product, but that took a while to do.
And because I'm just thinking that if you know like 30,000 cans, for example, taste bad, like how many I guess cans do you have like one of your team members maybe try out or to make sure that like the product is consistent.
The cans will always be good. Like all 30,000 are going to taste the same.
Same. No, exactly.
That's a problem if they all taste the same and they taste bad though. What's better is usually carb level. Like when a carb machine starts working up, it's going to be a lower carbonation, so it's not going to be as heavily carbed. The best cans usually are in the middle of the run, which is let's say 98% of the run, but you're going to have 2% that are just a little bit softer, and that's kind of like is what it is.
Got it. That makes sense. How also do you think about like in terms of financing on your inventory as you've scaled? Has it been mostly obviously, beverage, CPG just in general is a very, very, capital intensive businesses because you're obviously selling like a physical product and of course, you're selling heavily through retail, and there's all types of different prices that they kind of catch you on the retail side of things. But how did you think about like financing? How do you think about financing Ruby, maybe from like the beginning days up until how it's like evolved to now?
I mean, we have a good network of investors, mainly angel investors. We run a very lean and tight ship. There are 3 of us, like, and that includes me. I think that one of our superpowers is that I think a lot of people think we're really, really, really big and we have this national thing, and we don't. Like, it's 3 people, and we have some amazing merchandisers and consultants here and there, but we keep it really, really lean, and that goes to our production too. There are periods where you can really invest in crazy, millions and millions of cans, but we've been really conservative about our can production, and that means that we're doing production probably more
Runs more often.
regularly than, yeah, but that also means that we're conserving cash and able to push it more willfully out into the market to support. We haven't done any debt financing. We've considered it, but the rates, as you probably know, have been very cost prohibitive over the last 2 years, so we kind of shy away from that.
Got it. Got it. So no debt financing. You pretty much using like all cash in order to pay for it in order to pay for the runs, and doing like a lot more runs regularly. How regularly is it typically? Like, are we talking like once a
Quarterly, I would
month
say.
or quarterly? Quarterly. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Got it. And how long does it take in terms of to actually when you actually set out to actually do an order with the manufacturer? How long does it actually take to actually create that run nowadays?
You mean like start to finish? Like
Start to finish, yeah.
usually like 6 to 8 weeks. Like
Okay.
you need to make sure that your can supplier has the artwork and it all looks good and they can print it pretty seamlessly. You need to make sure that your supplier has all the ingredients, which you usually order well in advance just based on your projections. And then you need to make sure it's all centralized. There are some co-packers, as you know very well, who will be the centralized location and put in all the orders for you. We don't do that. We do all the orders ourselves. We don't work with a co-packer who puts the orders in for us. So it's a little bit more work for us.
So that means that you're the ones that are ordering the actual like raw ingredients and everything on it kind of in bulk. And are you ordering like those the raws, like are you ordering like enough quantity that it could then do like multiple runs, for example, until you always have raws, or is it
No, usually we do it run by
run run?
run because
Okay.
again, it's organic ingredients, so we want to retain the efficacy, and like freezing and refreezing a product isn't good, and then storing frozen ingredients can get costly too. So we cycle.
Got it. How also do you think about bringing on? I know that you're now in. I think is it like over 200 Whole Food stores you're in now. Is that right? Or
Yeah, I think we're right around there.
cool.
We're on the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Amazing. That's congrats. That's huge. How also do you think about like retail expansion in general? Do you think about it like obviously you're on the Whole Food side of things very very East Coast oriented. Are you thinking about? Do you also think about other retailers that are in those regions? Do you how do you so how I, I guess what is kind of like the retail strategy these days in terms of expansion, or is it right now kind of focusing on the current stores that you're in?
It's a little bit of both. Like you want to make sure that your velocity story in the stores you're in is really good, period, because that builds the demand for the other places you're going as well. You want to make sure that there's demand for your product before you actually get into that retail store. Because the worst thing that can happen is, you get a great account and then you just die on shelf and then you're going to get discontinued when you could have done very well if you just waited a little bit longer. So we try to be patient. We try. We don't always succeed. But our hope is never to kind of get ahead of our skis. We're focused very much on the natural chains of indies, co-ops, really great grocery stores.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I would, and also like, yeah, I mean, it seems like also in this climate as well, where of course, like on the equity side of things, it's been really hard to, fundraise, and brands are kind of shifting towards, more, trying to become more profitable, as terms of growing. I would say, how are you thinking about, growth versus profitability? It seems like you're kind of building it kind of store by store by store and kind of, and as like, and building it out there. But is right now like profitability a focus? Is growth more of a focus? How are you kind of thinking about these two things?
Again, there's got to be levers on both. Period. Like if you're just focused on one or the other, it's probably going to be a problem. Unless again, look, it depends on the level of top line. It depends on your gross profit margin, of course. For us, we have a healthy gross profit margin. So how we kind of look at it is, are we reducing our cost of goods annually? What kind of savings are we realizing as we continue to scale up? And is there more room for realizing value, as we continue to scale out? Um, Again, if the biggest retail in the world called me tomorrow and they said we want to launch you in every single door, I would probably have to say no, because I don't think we would do well in every single door. Because brand penetration, the idea of someone saying, oh, there's Ruby, I like Ruby, I'm going to grab a Ruby, when you have a shelf of 1,000 beverage brands in front of you, doesn't take 1 year, it doesn't take 2 years, it doesn't take 5 years, it takes usually 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that to maybe it's like your prior point when we opened this conversation, you're talking about how being in the field is so important. And so if you did, if you got that call and went national, then it means as well that hey, we're gonna have to actually hire people to actually be in all these stores too, right? And make sure that and then it's a
Fundraise. Then
complete
you're going to
yeah.
fundraise. Yeah.
Of course, then you fundraise exactly. We have this PO from a national retailer, but like, but as you say, like you have to like commit to it because as you say, you're fighting against another like 1,000 brands that are kind of on shelf, and so what actually makes Ruby stand out? Um, how how do you think overall about price? I feel like price sometimes is not really talked about as much. Obviously, we talk about brand, we talk about marketing, we talk about ingredients, we talk about what we're selling. But how do you overall think about I guess initially pricing your product for Ruby?
It's a great question, and one that we're debating right now, because like we're at a point where, again, we just realized some really nice savings. with our cost of goods. And the question is, are we at a place where we can pass those savings down to the consumer? And that goes to your previous question of, well, are you going for growth or are you going for profit? For us, we're not ready yet to pass the savings on. We want to as soon as possible, but the fact is, every penny counts right now. And I would say most of the retail doors we're in are premium accounts where usually they are priced higher as well. So there's a little less price sensitivity, I would say, just by virtue of kind of the cities and the doors that we're in. But it's a question we have. We know that to compete on a national scale, mass, our price at the shelf level is going to have to reduce considerably.
Got it. Yeah, uh that makes sense in terms of if you wanted to go mass on grocery in terms of actually being maybe how consumers might be a lot more price conscious, but as opposed to natural, usually there's a much more like premium products that you're dealing with. How and in terms of like on the ingredient side of things, like kind of breaking down your cogs, obviously you have, organic hibiscus, that you're obviously sourcing. Then you have water, as well, in terms of your two ingredients. Um, well, what what's the most kind of like expensive part of the process? Is it like sourcing like the organic hibiscus? Is it also on
It's
the
the
manufacturing
organic juice.
the organic
So,
juice?
like as an example, we have like Concord grape, berry cherry, Fuji apple. All of these have hibiscus as the base and foundation. But the thing that's flavoring those products is not natural flavors. It's not artificial flavors. It's not extracts. It's literally organic juice that we're sourcing. And organic juice, it's unfortunate, but it's a very expensive ingredient. So that is the most cost prohibitive part, I'd say.
Wow, that's interesting. So the organic juice part, organic juice is the biggest is the biggest part
And
that usually
tolling.
costs.
Of course, co-packer tolling
Totally,
too, because
totally,
we
yeah.
haven't scaled yet where we can be like, ooh, it's all the way down. But tolling, of course, is a big piece.
Yeah. Did you ever have has there been a situation where where you realize, hey, we're actually, and maybe you don't have this because it seems like you're pretty tight in terms of how much you actually order. And you obviously make maybe a lot more runs than maybe other brands. But do you ever have issues at all with like excess inventory or inventory that you're like unable to sell?
Historically, no. We're at an interesting point right now where we're doing a redesign of our cans because we're moving into printed cans, and our current design can't work in printed cans. There's too much color all over the place for printed cans here. Um, so we're shifting the design, and what that means is, we are sitting on inventory that would have happily gone to the market, and that we would have sold out because we're very lucky. Our shelf life is 16 months, because hibiscus is naturally acidic. Um, so normally that wouldn't be excess inventory, but we are trying to clear the sheet so that we can get the printed cans in the market as soon as possible. So I think it'll probably be the first time that we have to deal with excess inventory.
What do you, in terms of that's so interesting because with CB with food and bev, you would think that the reason why you have excess inventory is because of obviously the inventory going bad, right? But in your case, it's kind of interesting that it's actually like a packaging decision, more so. What do you I'm just kind of curious. What would you plan on like doing with that excess inventory of the cans that are of the old design?
The OG of the OG. It's funny. I have a call with a partner potentially after this about that. One, there's the traditional route. There are amazing liquidators out there, that you can talk to, whether it's Misfits Market. There's a new one called Martie, Martie, that I hear great things about. There's Grocery Outlet, there's AAA. There are a lot of these companies out there that are happy to take the product off your hands at a very steep discount to you. So you have to know what your comfort level is. You need to know what your floor is. What are you going to be happy walking away with at the end of the day? Um, but we like to usually see if there are side doors. We like to find out if there's a way that we can push the norm. So one thing that I'm trying to figure out, because I'm not the only founder who's ever dealt with this or who is dealing with this right now. So what if there was an opportunity where a number of us could partner together for a weekend long event, let's say, and it's very clearly a liquidation event, and we all kind of can market it out to our customers so that they can win in this instance as well, and that they can win with other products too. And instead of buying a ruby for, $35 a case, they buy it for considerably less. We realize our full cost of goods, maybe a little bit more on top of that, and we make a party out of it. So I'm talking to a few partners to see if someone would financially back that so that I don't have that cost on my books, and to see if they would also host it digitally on their platform so that if there is a delivery component, they can write this off essentially as cost of acquisition. Um, so I'm hopeful that I can make that happen because that would be a lot of fun and weird.
That'd be super fun. That'd be awesome. If you're able to do it, would love to attend. That
Well, I'll
sounds like
let
a
you
lot of
know,
fun.
man. I'll
Yeah,
let you know.
yeah.
It's in the works. I'll let you know if the partners is after this.
Cool, awesome. How also, do you think about when it comes to different sales channels? How do you also think about like e-commerce in general? I know that you have like a pretty big presence on Amazon, or that you direct people to shop on Amazon on like your website. How do you think about like D2C versus Amazon in your perspective?
D2C, in my opinion, is a brand builder. If you want to learn more about Ruby, if you want to see my billboard, go direct to consumer. And you'll learn everything. You can come into my brand universe, and I would love nothing more. But the fact is that the consumers who go to Ruby with the intent of learning about Ruby is probably 0.000000000000001% of Amazon's audience, period. Now, with Amazon's audience, I have people who are there with the intent to purchase. The only reason they're on Amazon, aside from watching whatever series is taking off right now, like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, is to buy something, period. So if I can capture them at moment of intent to purchase, that's a pretty powerful place to get them. And that, buy with one click is a really amazing piece of tech. So I think of Amazon as kind of a fish where the fish are component, and I think of our direct consumer channel as our billboard.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense in terms of also why why you're driving as well people to Amazon. I mean, and it's also one of those things too where you get you give up obviously like a bit of margins on Amazon, but at the same time, you probably are going to sell way more product on Amazon than you are D2C. So
That's exactly right. It's there are a lot of necessary evils in the business, so to speak, and like Amazon as a platform, I think gets a bad rap for how much business they deliver us. We're very happy to be on Amazon, and there are a lot of costs that come with direct consumer too.
what what percentage of your business right now is like Amazon versus like wholesale when it comes to sales?
Probably somewhere between like 10 to 20%. We've been wholesale and retail first since the very beginning. So we're glad that that's grown hand in hand. But our core focus is retail.
When you get into I mean, obviously you were in Whole Foods first, which is incredible, but like when you get into like a new a new store, a new retailer, a new grocery shop, how do you define to make sure that like that is going to be a success, like the actual launch of Ruby in that store? Like what are you kind of like doing in terms of the rollout in like maybe like that first like month or two?
I mean, there was one partner who's an amazing store, Mom Organics. Mom Organics call themselves kind of like an urban Zen garden of a grocery store, and they're absolutely correct. Like it's an amazing grocery store. It's in the Mid Atlantic, and we talked with their team beforehand and said, "Can we please demo? Like, please let us demo your stores." And they were like, "We don't like demos because we want our customers to be unbothered while they're shopping." Which is so rad. Like that is a really awesome component. Seriously, like as a customer, like that sounds wonderful. But we said, well, what if I, Noah, went to every single store in the Mid-Atlantic and I dropped cases off with your customer service team to give out to customers? And they said, "You're insane, but if you want to do that, sure." So that was like an example of, I got in the car. I have a herniated disc in my back because of this business. I've spent too much time in the car. But I went to every single Mom's Organic and I dropped off, probably 10 cases. And I said, please give this out. And here are some booklets of coupons for you to enjoy too. Um, that's like any case where we can get in front of customers. It's liquid to lips is gold, and that's real, and that stands true. So that's the type of stuff we like doing.
No, that's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's just really just being creative in terms of how you can actually stand out when you are, a new brand on the shelf. And I mean, also, I'm sure left quite an impression, with them as well. And that's
I
awesome
think
too.
that like two things that are highly underrated in business are saying please and saying I'm sorry. And that's like, I think that's a lot of it. That's, I think that's really important with partners.
I totally agree. Ruby is your first beverage brand, is that right?
That's a fact.
What was, I guess, in starting Ruby, what was most like least expected or unexpected thing you kind of learned about the beverage business that has been, most difficult or tough that you maybe didn't think so prior?
All of it. Like every single piece of it. And I'm not unique in saying this. And I was warned before starting Ruby by a number of founders and past founders as well. They're like, you are going into the hardest industry ever. And it's very easy to say, yeah, sure. Like, I can grit it out. I can grit my teeth. I got this. But it is the every single day someone's coming after your space. Every single day you need to make sure that your numbers are going up. Every single day you need to make sure your can supplier has gotten the cans to the co-packer on time. You need to make sure those ingredients are 100%. Every part of it was way harder than I could have expected. And the good of that is what I said before, which is I think about the little stuff I sweat at the beginning of this journey, or even in my past life before Beverage, and it's nothing. Like if you want to get a thick skin, great business to be in. But be prepared that calluses come with a lot of work. So, all of it's been hard, but the value of it is you just toughen the hell up.
My last question to you is, what would you value more, $100 of inventory or $100 cash?
It's a good question. At the end of the day, it's probably $100 of inventory. The fact of the matter is being able to give that product out and get people to try it. Ideally, best case scenario, there's compound value that comes from that. You get one person who likes your product and they buy it every single week. Let's just say week for a year. You've got 52 units sold. If you get 5 of those, you do the math, it gets better and better. So I would take the inventory.
That makes sense. I mean, even how I think about this question is, if there's any type of demand for your product, if there is like a pull towards your product, then you can obviously flip that $100 of inventory into more than $100 of cash, right? But I think to your point, which was interesting, is like even if you take out that inventory and give it out to people for free, then they might become lovers of your product for a year or for life, and that's from an LTV perspective and from a dollar perspective, like that's way more value than $100. So that's great. Noah, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise, man. I appreciate it. Always good chatting.
And there you have it. It was a pleasure chatting with Noah. Noah, thanks again for your time and teaching us how you're building Ruby Hibiscus. It was so cool. If you enjoyed this and want to hear it again or replay the part you missed, you can find the recast of our webcast on our website and on our YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe to get alerts whenever there's new content available. And please subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Thank you for listening.